Thank you, Mr. Zania. Could we hear from Professor Andrew Horwitz from Regulate Rhode Island?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the House Judiciary Committee. After 3 decades as a criminal defense attorney, I have come to the firm conclusion that using the criminal justice system to deal with the public health issues related to the use of marijuana is a complete and abject failure. It has done nothing to reduce the use of marijuana. Most particularly, it's done nothing to reduce the use of marijuana among our children, which is, of course, the area of greatest concern. It's been extraordinarily expensive. It's done tremendous damage to many lives and communities, most particularly communities of color. I presently serve as an Assistant Dean for Experiential Education and the Director of the Criminal Defense Clinic at Roger Williams University School of Law. I'm a past president and a member of the Executive Committee of the Rhode Island Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. I am a co-chair of Regulate Rhode Island. I'm here to appeal to you in that last capacity and in my private capacity to strongly endorse House Bill 5555 and urge you to pass the bill this year. The urgency to reform our failed marijuana laws this year is primarily rooted in the fact that many Rhode Islanders' lives continue to be ruined by arrests for low-level offenses. According to the latest FBI statistics, this is the statistic my friend and colleague Jim Vincent was citing, there were over 1,400 arrests for marijuana in 2013 and 14 here in Rhode Island after the decriminalization of possession of small amounts was passed in 2012. After decades of this failed policy, tens of thousands of Rhode Islanders have criminal records for minor marijuana offenses, many of which could be expunged if the legislature passes this bill. Most concerning is that the arrest data proves that our punitive marijuana laws have disproportionately harmed communities of color. Let this be the year that we end this harmful policy, adopt an approach that actually protects public health and safety. As one would expect, arrests for marijuana have plunged in Colorado and Washington because consumers are no longer forced into an illegal market and can purchase marijuana legally. Legalizing and regulating marijuana would also mean fewer marijuana cases clogging our courts, taking away state resources from far more pressing criminal issues. There are a number of arguments put forward by opponents of this proposal that really clearly need to be rejected. One claim is that regulating marijuana and allowing legal access for adults will somehow endanger our children. We must accept the obvious reality that our current policy does absolutely nothing to prevent marijuana from ending up in the hands of teens. Prohibition does not protect them. What it does is create additional dangers for our teens. The easy access to marijuana presently prevailing amongst our teens comes entirely through an illicit drug market. Illegal drug dealers don't check IDs. They have no qualms about offering harder drugs in addition to marijuana. Illegal dealers don't care if the marijuana they give our kids is laced with other drugs. I would far prefer that teens not use marijuana at all. The evidence is overwhelming that marijuana use in teens is very damaging. But if teens are going to use marijuana, and they are, I would far prefer that it be tested and free of toxic contaminants. We know that the illegal market, which thrives under our current policy, recruits youth to become involved in the illegal drug trade. A 2012 survey by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University found that over 40% of high school students know a peer, a fellow teen, who's become part of the illicit marijuana trade, in other words, a drug dealer. In comparison, less than 1% reported knowing a fellow student who sells alcohol. Marijuana could not be more accessible to minors than it already is under our current policy. Legalizing marijuana for adults will largely put the illegal dealers out of business. It will certainly reduce the number of youth involved in the illegal drug trade directly. Regulation is clearly the smart and responsible approach for those who truly care about the well-being and safety of our children. Another argument from opponents that must be discarded is the notion that we're ill-equipped to address the issue of impaired driving. As an attorney who has litigated these kind of cases for now 3 decades, I'm confident that the same procedures in place now will remain intact under legislation. In fact, just this morning, I was in the traffic tribunal with one of my students litigating a refusal case that involved an allegation of the use of marijuana. I was very surprised to hear the chief of the Police Chiefs Association suggesting that field sobriety tests presently in place are not the field sobriety tests they use to test for impairment by use of marijuana. He directly contradicted the testimony I heard under oath this morning at the traffic tribunal, and it was of little comfort to my client, who was convicted of the refusal charge that he faced, predicated again on the use of marijuana in combination with alcohol, that somehow this legislation would change any of those realities. It simply would not. It is true that there is not a universally accepted breathalyzer right now for the use of marijuana, but the bottom line is, and I was very impressed by the earlier testimony from the doctor, if we cannot establish that somebody is actually impaired by the use of marijuana, then the concern that marijuana may be in the system really is irrelevant to the concern that's been espoused about somehow there might be an increased driving while under the use of or the influence of marijuana. If the physical impact isn't clearly measurable to a police officer, then I'm not sure what the concern is that we have about that person driving. Claims that marijuana impaired driving has increased in states like Colorado and Washington are not supported by compelling evidence. Those states have implemented new drug testing policies, so we're really comparing apples to oranges. Moreover, the studies that have been cited that involve drug tests where there have been victims in traffic accidents can't determine beyond whether there was marijuana in the system whether there's any relationship between the marijuana in the system and the accident. There's also some evidence that things are trending in a positive direction since marijuana was legalized in those states. From 2014 to 2015, the number of people cited for marijuana-impaired driving in Colorado actually declined. And according to data from the Washington State Patrol, drug-only DUI arrests decreased from a high of 1,700 and change in 2011 to just over 1,200 in 2014, an overall decrease of 28%. It's clear that our current policy of prohibition has not succeeded in reducing the widespread availability and use of marijuana. Like alcohol prohibition, our current policy ensures that marijuana sales take place in an illegal and unregulated setting. Rather than eliminating marijuana from society, all prohibition has done is led to the creation of an underground market that provides a revenue stream for criminal enterprises and is to the detriment of public health and safety. We can't frame the debate about whether we want marijuana in society or not. We have marijuana in our society. It's here. Prohibition has done nothing to stem it. The question really is whether marijuana should remain in an illegal, unregulated market that poses all sorts of threats to public health and safety, or whether we'll create a well-regulated system of legal access for adults. When the question is framed like this, it becomes clear that regulation and control is a far preferable strategy than our current policy. And I urge you to pass this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Professor Horwitz? Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.